So I have a question. Are we having any kind of a presentation about the topic of home away from home, or it's going to be more of a discussion?
No, we're going to have a presentation. Nicolas is going to present uh, his project that is a home away from home,
Hmm.
and um, and then we'll have the discussion and we'll open for questions. So
Those
you
things.
can
Yeah.
yeah you can ask him anything.
Yeah,
He's actually
amazing.
he hasn't presented his project yet, so this will be a test run for him. So it's
Yeah.
Oh,
useful
that's
for him
great.
as well.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. I think it's a very interesting topic. I do in first year students design studio address the concept in class for a different project. Like we are designing a student residence, but the idea of still being home away from home is part of how we conceptualize our projects in that specific studio. So I'm very interested to hear more from
Oh,
your experience.
thank you. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Very good.
Yeah, I present in 2 weeks, so
You
there's
do. Oh, you're defending your thesis in 2 weeks.
yeah, I'm defending my thesis in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Nice.
Amazing.
So this is a nice opportunity to get questions in.
Yeah.
So
Good
and
job.
hopefully not realizing that he missed something very important.
Oh, I mean,
Right.
there's so many things that I haven't like been able to dive in because of time. But I'm sure like I would love to continue this project. I was in talks with people from FIU.
Yeah.
'Cause there's some professors there that are doing PhDs and stuff like that in terms of like space exploration and living in space. Um, so that'll be a good opportunity to sort of like try to get this project to a different level if possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so take notes today and prepare yourself for the questions.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. I was
Yes.
doing that, I remember, and I was doing my PhD. I was like, what to expect? Like,
Yeah,
it's a good
Wow.
to, yeah, it's a good experience today.
yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, let's wait a couple of more minutes and we'll get started.
Mm.
After the presentation, I'm gonna send the people who, well, the attendees of the
Mhm.
presentation, a survey just to get
Okay.
feedback, not on Nicolas' presentation, but as
Right.
the experience of Café Connect and see what you get out from
Right.
it and if it's
Right.
useful and collect suggestions and feedback, which are very valuable for this
Right.
initiative. So that is also something that would be part of the dynamic.
Good.
I
Perfect.
can tell you right away, it's very helpful.
Nice.
Yeah, I like the idea. Like I was actually talking in the college like yesterday or the day before
Mhm.
about how it's very important to share knowledge between faculty and educators because sometimes we do things differently, and then when you listen to other perspectives and other ideas, it also um like you embrace new different knowledges, and it's reassuring and it's very helpful.
Very nice.
Nice. So we'll get started. I'm
Okay.
gonna people are still coming in, but I think we're gonna get started. I'm gonna present. This is our first Café Connect, which is an initiative from ITAC's South region. And we wanted to create a space where educators, students, and practitioners could share their experiences, their methodologies, and how they approach interior design and design-related work to enrich our educational practices and our professional practices. And this space is also open for students to share what they're doing. So we're going to start this first session of Café Connect with our feature, which is Nicolas Pinzon. He's a Colombian design student, a former student of mine here in Colombia at the Universidad de los Andes. And he's finishing his master's in architecture down at the University of Miami. And he's going to talk about his thesis project and his process and everything that entails. And just as a side note, I'm glad to present Nicolas. He's a very hard and focused designer and worker, a very valuable and talented human being that is very determined to get in where he wants to go. So I hope you ask him a lot of questions, and because what he's going to present is something that I think it's an evolution of what he's been doing as an architect and as a designer. Because I was his undergrad final project advisor, and he worked in something similar, I think, because I find resemblance in both works, and with a different topic, but within a similar approach. He's not going to present that part, the undergraduate project, but he's going to present his master's project. So I leave you with Nicolas Pinzon, our first presenter for Café Connect.
Hello. Thank you very much for making it here. Let me know when you see my screen, and thank you, Daniel, for that presentation. I really appreciate that. Let me know when you see my screen, please.
I see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is my thesis project for my master's. It's called Home Away from Home, and I've always been interested in the way we inhabit space, and especially when we are away from our actual home. So as Daniel was saying, my undergrad thesis was in migrant housing, especially people coming here to the US. So I've always been interested in that intersection between coming from a different culture and doing that transition to different spaces, and how as humans we try to evolve and try to adjust ourselves to the different spaces and different typologies that we might find ourselves in those situations. So this project is sort of like a continuation, as he was saying, but this time it's in a different context, it's in space. And I've always been fascinated with this idea of going to a different planet, a different moon. But as I was doing my research, this is sort of like where I was imagining we would be by this time, but right now this is how the living conditions are looking like for people going to space. So it was like a shock for me to see that we are doing all these technological advancements, but yet we're still focusing on how to get there, but not how are we going to feel as humans going not only out of our country, but out of our world, our like comforts, gravity is different, and so on. So if we analyze these stages of like traveling and space travel, we find ourselves first looking at like how do we live in our home in Earth, and we find that there's different levels, and we find our different levels of privacy within our home, where we can have different types of lighting, different surfaces, space personalization and flexibility. Our spaces tend to be configurable. We can host rituals. It's culturally expressive. We have spaces to just chill or work or be socially active. But when we start analyzing the spaces that are being proposed by all these different firms and engineers to go to Mars or the moon, which is a goal for NASA to get there by 2030, we see these in situ structures to be way different than what we are used to seeing that, also because of the conditions, of the harsh conditions that we might find ourselves in those situations, in those planets. But they're not familiar. There's no sense of time. So my focus for this thesis was more thinking about not the destination, but the journey. And that I know it sounds like cliche talking about that. But for me, it's really important to understand that we might be ourselves in this spaceship if we ever go to a different planet for 10 months or even years just to reach our final destination. So we might as well enjoy ourselves and enjoy our life during that process. So these spaceship structures on the left, on the left, you'll see the current situation in the International Space Station. But then there's really no other structures that we can compare it to. So we have to go to sci-fi and start looking at like how movies and TV shows are treating this experience. Like for example in Star Trek or Star Wars that you guys might be familiar with. They treat these spaces as something really similar to the conditions that we have here in Earth. You can walk, you can have furniture, openings, windows, but the reality is completely different. The current state of space living is pretty much just full of workspaces, laboratories, and storage spaces. The people that are usually there in the International Space Station are usually just researchers, more or less in their 40s with family, and their schedule is really, really tight. They wake up at 6 a.m. and they work all the way to 7 p.m. And just living about 2 hours of personal time. But their schedule is pretty much just eat, sleep, work, and repeat. And when you see how are these things being held in there, these activities, it's really a shock on how they're living. Also because there's no gravity, so they have to adapt to those things. But you find that these people have this dream, this curiosity to go beyond Earth, but they find themselves in a place where their home and their work are in the same place. They have no space for their personal artifacts. There's no cultural continuity, which in a sense, and based on some of the interviews they've done, they are sort of like prisoners of their own work. So if we look at a section of some of the modules in the International Space Station, we find ourselves with a whole different perspective than what we saw here on Earth, where these spaces are more compact, they're monotonous, there's no sense of orientation, they're culturally lacking, they're really cold, there's really no sense of like personalization, they're hard and utilitarian, and more importantly, there's no levels of privacy because they go from work to work zones. So they have like limited autonomy. And on top of that, if we add that they are constantly like drowned in work, they have to deal with microgravity, which a human being cannot spend more than 10 months in space because our body starts turning the fluids and on all these things, they start paying a toll on us. So we start having problems with focusing, discomfort in our like hands and muscles. Our bone density also decreases. So it's also like a really harsh environment for the human to live in. And the conditions there are not like helping us to live. So I started making this question of like, okay, what makes us be and not just survive, you know? What makes us go from this concept of the homo faber, or the man who does, the man who works, to how we live and how we usually treat our lives here in Earth, which is like this concept of the homo ludens, of the man who plays and the man who uses the game as a tool to enjoy life. So how can we start translating this into a more formal architecture, in which we start yielding to memory, to the things that we used to do as kids, these familiar forms that we can translate to foreign skies, or foreign spaces, this sense of a bubble, or inflatables that offer a promise to worlds within worlds, and I feel it's like the ultimate lack of distance. And we've been testing inflatables for quite some time, and if we start thinking about like logistics and sending stuff to space is first like really hard. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, but also it's really expensive. So this is the space shuttle that we've been using for decades, and they've every time they do a mission, which is every 10 months or every year, they send a space shuttle with some modules that will attach to the International Space Station to sort of like try to expand their workforce. But if we think about like using inflatables instead, we can go from just sending 2 modules to possibly sending up to 5 modules, depending on how we create them. Inflatables, if you might be like questioning yourself, they have been tested in space. We have a module right now that's been there for since 2016, and according to NASA's research, it's the inflatable modules have been more resistant than the hard ones, but it's been quite a long journey for them, and some of the companies that had been working with NASA have gone into bankruptcy and all that, which it's why we haven't seen more of these inflatable modules in space. Also, if you have been like asking yourself too, how are we connecting modules once we are in the space station? There's this common berthing mechanism, which is essentially like a plug, like the one we use to charge our phones or something like that, in which each module or of the existing infrastructure have different outlets or plugs where you can go ahead and install new infrastructure. So with this idea, we could essentially compact an inflatable space into this common berthing mechanism. And once we get to space, we can install it and start the inflating process to get an inflatable that expands as twice as the diameter of an ISS module. And it can be bigger or the same width and length of one of them. So we can see how this space station can evolve to having more flexible environments, and we start thinking about this new era of space living, in which we not only have laboratories and storage, but we also start having dedicated spaces for crew quarters, for social gatherings, for meditation and religious activities, in which people can nourish, rejuvenate, create, and experience similar things that as what we do here in Earth. How I'm thinking we can do this and we can achieve this flexibility, it will be with a flexible knitted fabric partition that will go inside these inflatables and will allow us to reconfigure these spaces the way we want. This knitted fabric will also have some inflatable pillows inside that will allow us to also mitigate some of the noise and essentially more like noise. It will lack sort of like a transition between different spaces to make it a more pleasant experience for people up there. Let me share this GIF. Are you seeing this GIF? Hopefully.
I can see it.
Okay, so this is just a GIF that shows how we start with a grid of multiple anchor points. And with that and the use of the knitted fabric partition, we can reconfigure these inflatables depending on our needs. Sometimes at a space station, there can be 4 people, but there's missions in where you find up to 10 or 12 people in this space station. So you might have this cycle in which you send these inflatables with the crew. They can assemble them, they can reconfigure the spaces, and they can have this flexibility of having spaces other than laboratories. So if we look more in depth to how these spaces look like, the crew quarters module can have up to 8 quarters for 8 different people. It's the same length as a typical ISS module, which is 36 feet, and it can go up to 10 feet. And also, since there's no sense of orientation in space, meaning that you don't know what's like your ground, what's your ceiling, you can change your body orientation however you want. So we can use that into our advantage to have dedicated spaces for sleep, but they can also have spaces like if they flip themselves, they can maybe have a place to read a book or just sit down or meditate or do all these kind of things that as humans we like to do in our free time. One thing also to mention here is that they're using sleeping bags right now in the ISS because if they don't like hook themselves to something, they'll just float. So how I'm solving this is along with the space module, there will be like this inflatable furniture pieces that can also be hooked to this anchoring system within the interior of the inflatable. And these furniture pieces will have some hook points so people can attach themselves and not float right away. We can also have some intimate modules where people can thrive with their cultural beliefs, and maybe we can have some projections in the inflatable fabric that can help people to transport themselves to different places in Earth. and can help them feel closer to home. And also, the final one is a social module, a cultural gathering module, which it's gonna be way bigger than the other modules, is way taller. And with this, we find ourselves facing a really interesting challenge, and it's that if you are within a space that is too large and you don't have any place to like get yourself to and try to, I don't know, to like try to move around, you will just float, and there's no way that you can move around because there's no air. So with this, what I decided to do to create this bigger space is like having this sort of like thin fabric columns, let's call it like that, in which people can just like take them to move around, to move up and down, and use the space however they want to sort of like gather and have like a more social interaction. And this is sort of like my vision of how we can use these inflatables also as a threshold point, a transition between your work and your life, you know. So this is sort of like this transition between the cold space and this more warm space that it's like waiting for you to relax, to chat with your family, also like add some notes, add some drawings, yeah, and live essentially. And yeah, that's how I'm thinking we can go from survival and thinking just about that to thriving, in which we can separate home and work. We allow spaces for personal artifacts and familiar comforts, and these inflatable habitats are going to offer more adaptable environments, allowing for this cultural continuity, having a temporary home that might become permanent dwellings when we start our journey to different planets. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now. Thank you very much.
Nice.
Thank you, Nicolas. So I'm gonna open the floor or the call for questions for whoever might have questions.
So what made you interested in space specifically?
I mean, ever since I was a kid, like I've always wanted to explore space, and looking at all these movies makes it like a dream when you're a kid. And once I'm in this like process of becoming an architect, just taking a stab at this topic within architectural lens, I feel it's really interesting, and you start finding different challenges and different things that as architects we might get a chance to try to create spaces where people can thrive and live and enjoy, other than leaving those types of spaces just to engineers, because these spaces are typically just designed by engineers, and they're just more focused on things working out for their laboratories and their working spaces, rather than how the people are gonna feel like in those spaces.
All right.
Okay. Miriam, go ahead.
Hi, Nicolas. First, I would like to thank you for this very interesting presentation. And I have a couple of questions for you. So I've been wondering, when you did introduce at the beginning the human body and how it can adapt or not to the environmental conditions there. And like you talked a little bit about, we lose bone density, we like something happened with the fluids inside the body. So you did introduce some of the challenges that we as humans can face in space.
Yeah.
So based on this introduction, I'm wondering how we can overcome this, and or if we actually know if we can overcome this. Plus, the other thing that is I'm wondering about is the use of materials for design. So we know that the materials we've been using, all the ideas, the beautiful, very creative ideas about flexible materials, we have been testing this on Earth, right? So we don't know actually how would they react in space and whether they can sustain the conditions or not.
We actually know how long can the human body can like face these challenges, and ideally the human body cannot go more than 10 months in space. There's been people that have been in space for almost 400 days, and when they come back to Earth, I mean, their body condition is completely messed up. They have to learn how to walk again. Their circadian rhythm, it's also really difficult to get used to here in Earth, because in space they're facing a new sunrise every 90 minutes. So they also have to adapt themselves, and since they don't have this change of lighting throughout the day, because there's really, if you put like windows in the International Space Station, then you start having issues about radiation, which if we add those windows in this space station, the human cannot survive for more than 2 months, essentially. So we are just trying to, or me with this project, I'm trying to focus on like the living conditions and how they can, because they're facing all these discomforts in their body, and on top of that, they're like getting away from all that they're used to in Earth. So it's more also like a mental toll. So if with this they can have some sort of like flexibility and familiar comforts, that sort of like can help them mentally to sort of like overcome these body problems that they might be facing.
So if I understand you correct, you're trying here to improve the quality of life for them within the period of time that they have to spend in space out of necessity, right? Like let's talk maybe astronauts, or like as you said, like or research or any type of purpose. So they are temporarily living, and then you're trying to improve that period of living time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and what about the materials? Do we know if they can sustain the conditions there?
Yes, they use let me go to this. They use NASA has been developing this material for more than 20 years now. It's sort of like a fabric that has some Kevlar in it. And this inflatable wall, it's really thick because in space, and especially in LEO, which is this part of the atmosphere that we have this International Space Station at, there's a ton of space debris, which is all these parts that have been, we have essentially like a graveyard in space. It's like a dumpster. So all these little pieces, they fly around our Earth at really high speeds, and they're constantly hitting this space station. So this material has been proven that it can withstand these little impacts even better than the rigid structures that they have here.
Okay, and this applies to the interior materials as well, right?
Yeah, the interior material is just it's more like a fabric type of material, because what we are interested in is like being safe from the outside conditions. But once we are inside, the only thing we need to make sure is that the inflatable is correctly pressurized, and it has the recommended level of like PSI. So we can start incorporating different like systems for air, for exhaust, and all of that will make our stay there much more comfortable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Hannah, you have a question?
Yeah, so Nicholas, hey, I'm Hannah Smith. I'm a graduate from Florida State University, and I see that my thesis chair for my research is on the call, Dr. McLean. And I really appreciated this because I actually did my thesis, my master's thesis on spacecraft design. And it was how to design for people in space, factors influencing astronauts' psychological well-being during long-term space travel. And so everything that you talked about, I've researched myself and you nailed it spot on. And I really appreciated how you came together with your designs and your knowledge, and how you created an intimate module to provide a space for wellness or respite for people who go into space, or a social gathering space. And so I think you've done a phenomenal job. And I don't know if you came across the architect, the female architect. She's Russian, Galina Balashova, but she was responsible for helping design the final design of the space station Mir. And she also helped develop some ideas for the Soyuz spacecraft. But I would love to chat with you like more off the call. But I think you've done a phenomenal job here. And I don't know if this is, the end of your thesis, but great job. And if you would like to get in contact of maybe getting an interview with an astronaut, I was actually able to interview former astronaut Norm Thagger for my research too. So I would just love to connect with you more off the call, because this is just, I'm nerding out because I did this similar things, and you've done an awesome job on your research and just coming together with some concepts and ideas of what we can create as designers and architects on, spaces for long-term space travel, because I do think we're going to get to Mars in our lifetime. So congratulations, you did an awesome job.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'll love to connect with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can put my email in the chat or something, and we can talk from there.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Hannah. We have a question from Cece, who's asking to ask a question through the Q&A. So go ahead, Cece.
Thank you. Hello, Daniel. It's a little bit aligned with Hannah's question, and I'm wondering, because I'm working on the emotional and the psychological part of interior design, so I'm very curious about the issues that these people face when they're confined in their station. Do you have an idea of what their psychological and emotional issues they have when they're there?
I mean, I didn't go in depth into the psychological part, but I understand that they like microgravity, since our body is full of fluids, and we need gravity for these fluids to flow throughout our body. Once we lose that, we really don't like our body starts functioning differently, So I guess and the interviews that I've seen on the internet, they start feeling unwell. They have a period for like 3 to 4 weeks in which it's really hard for them to focus, to concentrate, to get tasks done. So they are constantly trying to, I don't know, get on calls with family, try to exercise, which exercise in space is really different, because you cannot really lift weights because it's weightless, but they do some sort of like resistance like efforts. But I feel it's really challenging for a human. I mean, talking about my experience, just leaving my country, and now that I've been here in the US for 3 years, like it's a really big toll that it hits your mind, just being away from your family, and being in a different culture. So I cannot imagine how hard it has to be being up there, which you're not only dealing with different people and different tasks that you have to do in your day-to-day, but you're also dealing with all this discomfort that you're feeling because your body is acting in a different way. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. If not, just let me know and we can like further.
Yes. No, I can imagine. Thank you. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you.
We also have a question from user, who
User.
I don't know.
Sorry, I need to put my name in there. But thank you for your presentation. My name is
Thank
Kishana
you.
James, by the way. And I was
Okay.
curious, you mentioned the cost would be high, but obviously well worth it. How open to this concept do you think the space industry would be?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear you well.
Just how open to the concept do you think the space industry would be due to cost?
To this, I mean, I feel it would be like really open because they already had different programs to use inflatables as a new way. Like there was this company called Bigelow. They were like developing infrastructure for NASA to create not only like crew quarters and different things, but they were also planning on expanding to like the industry of tourism. And sending people there as if it was like your next vacation, you know. So I feel like they've been exploring this for quite a while. It's just that they've been hitting like different roadblocks, where these companies like it gets so expensive to test these things, and the funding is, although for us it might seem like it's really big, when you're doing these tests, the funding it becomes like really like small. So they run out of funds really fast, and there's been quite a couple of like companies that have gone in bankruptcy. So that's why we haven't seen this as much. But hopefully we can perfect this and make it cheaper, and with all these like new technological advancements in which we can send rockets and then take them back to Earth, so we don't lose all that money. And so sending stuff to space is going to become even cheaper. And if we use inflatables, I feel it's going to be even cheaper and hopefully worth it to test.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Nicolas?
Hi, I actually did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So Nicholas, I really enjoyed your presentation. It's not something I've really worked with like some of the other folks on the call, but I'm curious if there's a way or perhaps a way to talk about more about that like historical development of these things, just to give it a little more context of like what exists now versus what you're kind of proposing, what could exist in the future. And so if you have any thoughts on that. And then secondly, I just wanted to commend you on your fantastic graphics. I thought the graphic quality very much was showing us rather than telling us, and I really appreciated that.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I mean, in terms of like the historical aspect of the project, like yes, as I show you guys in the beginning, like we only have one space station in in space, so that's like the only thing that I can look up to. But that's why I started looking at like fiction and what have we been like thinking about in books and in like comics and all that, because we've been thinking about like traveling out of our like planet for centuries. And I feel like now with technology, we are getting closer and closer to achieving those dreams and making them true. Which that's why like I was trying to like compare it to what's existing right now, which is this, to sort of like with what we see in the movies. and what's true and what's not. For us to be able to walk as we do here in Earth in space, we will have to generate such a gravitational field similar to Earth, which one, we would need like a mega structure in space that and there's some papers about that talk about how we can achieve this, but it will require like a really big think about like the Ferris wheel. So something that big, well, even bigger, that it's rotating at such high speed that it can generate gravitational force for us to ground ourselves in those space stations. And in terms of the graphics, I mean, thank you. I've been taking inspiration from Archigram, which is, you know them, and they were making these incredible like utopian structures. They're sort of like comic like graphics, and I was just trying to draw inspiration from them because I'm also creating something that is really utopian, but maybe with technological advancements, it looks more feasible now than maybe back in the day. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Simon, for your question, and thank you, Nicolas, for your answer. I just like to close up the session. I just wanted to ask Nicolas, and since we're educators and students here, to take us briefly around your process and how did you discuss this? How did you come about this themes and these topics and approach your advisors and your professors, and how that dynamic was, and how did the project come to be as an academic experience?
I mean, I first started this project last semester because NASA released a competition to come up with a system, like a recycling system for the atmosphere for low Earth orbit. Because it's, as I was saying in the presentation, we have sort of like a graveyard in there. It's full of trash, well, space trash. So they're trying to come up with a solution to either recycle these or do something with this trash. So I started thinking last semester, what if we create a space station that is sort of like this recycling hub, and we can use robotics and all sort of things to sort of like create different artifacts that then we can send to Mars or the moon as sort of like furniture or like small scale spaces. It's sort of like having I don't know, like some industry up there that can produce things. But then I started like getting a ton of like roadblocks in which there's a ton of like engineering stuff that I have no idea how to navigate, and my process was getting too technical and too into the engineering side. So I started deviating and having conversations with my advisors of maybe how can I reduce this because my program was too wide back then. So I started like, I don't know, like refining it until I got to what I have now, you know?
Okay, so you began with a very ambitious project and started scaling it down.
Yeah, sort of like with my undergrad thesis that I wanted to do this housing for all these people, and then so you're not an architect, and then, you know, like there's like different things that I can not really comprehend, and they're like out of my knowledge, so I have to narrow it down until I get to something that I can actually understand. And I've always been fascinated with the idea of modules and how this can help us to create flexible spaces, and yeah, that's how I navigated that.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there's any other questions for Nicolas. And just to let you know, I'm going to send an exit survey for to collect feedback on this presentation. And we're also going to post the video if someone else, well, if you want to share it, and to inform the other participants who weren't able to join in to maybe check it out afterwards. And I'm gonna send the survey so we can get feedback on today's session, because it's gonna be useful for further and for future Café Connect sessions. So I want to thank you all for your time. I want to thank especially Nicolas for sharing his work with us. That's very generous. And we hope to see you soon at the next Café Connect that is going to be about in a month. And we're going to post all the information through the communication outlets, and keep you all in the loop. So thank you for participating, and hope you enjoyed it, and have a nice weekend and a nice rest of the day.
Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank
It was
you.
very good. Interesting presentation. Very good.
Thank you very much.